aimed at creating real value for the people of Ghana and maximizing national benefits from the exploitation and management of the gold resources of our dear country. Today's engagement, ladies and gentlemen, is simply intended to address a number of baseless allegations and deliberate falsehoods concerning the operations and financial health of the Ghana Gold Board that have been propagated by certain individuals in recent times. Of particular concern is a persistent campaign of lies being waged by one Alexander Afenyo-Markin and his ilk against the Gold Board over the past couple of months. This sustained, relentless campaign reached a reckless crescendo yesterday at a press conference addressed by him within the precincts of Parliament. Afenyo-Markin's modus operandi, which can no longer be allowed to go unanswered, is to repeat the same tired falsehoods as often as possible and on many platforms as he can, in the hope that repetition will somehow transform fiction into facts and mislead unsuspecting members of the public. The Gold Board therefore deems it necessary that the record be set straight once and for all to prevent him and others like him from continuing to distort the remarkable performance and transformational impact of the Ghana Gold Board. First, ladies and gentlemen, Afenyo-Markin and his followers alleged on several occasions on the floor of Parliament and in the media that the Gold Board made losses in its gold trade operations in the year 2025. This claim is a barefaced lie, which has been debunked time without number by the Gold Board. The audited annual reports and financial statements of the Gold Board for the year ended December 31st, 2025, prepared and published by the Auditor General of Ghana, discloses an operational surplus of 907 million Ghana cedis and an overall surplus of profit of 5.4 billion Ghana cedis. This is an incontrovertible fact. And today, to settle this matter once and for all, I brought to this auditorium a copy of the annual report and financial statements of the Gold Board, prepared and published by the Auditor General, not Sammy Gyamfi and the Gold Board. We don't audit ourselves. Now, if you check page 12 of this report, you will see that the Gold Board on its own, from its own operations, generated total revenue of close to 1 billion Ghana cedis and kept expenditure just around 109 million Ghana cedis. And so that is what we mean by operational profit or surplus of 907 million. It means that if you took all the revenue we generated as an organization and you deducted our expenditure from it, we had 907 million left. Now, because in the 2025 budget statement, government budgeted a revolving seed capital as its equity for the newly established Gold Board of 4.5 billion Ghana cedis, which monies hit our accounts on or about 30th of December 2025. Those funds had to be added to the revenue of the Gold Board because they were not encumbered, they were not depleted, they were not dissipated. And that is why the overall surplus is 5.4 billion. And this reporting was done by the Auditor General under what is known as IPSAS guidelines. And the chartered accountants and auditors understand this very well. So we brought 50 copies, and we are going to distribute to you the audited financials of the Gold Board for 2025 as prepared and published by the Auditor General of Ghana, which puts to rest the false claim that the Gold Board has been making losses. Now, ladies and gentlemen, unsurprisingly, Afenyo-Markin and his followers have consciously chosen to disregard the Auditor General's confirmation that Gold Board did not record an operational loss. They now claim that the Auditor General did not have access to the full picture concerning the operations of the Gold Board. This position, ladies and gentlemen, betrays either a crass lack of understanding of how an external audit is conducted, or a deliberate determination to undermine yet another independent state institution, independent constitutional body, when its findings do not suit their mischievous narratives. I invite you, the media, you who are the fourth estate of the realm, to check the veracity of this claim with the Auditor General, and you will come to the conclusion that officials of the Auditor General were given unhindered access to all relevant information in the conduct of their audit of the 2025 financials of the Ghana Gold Board. All documents requested by them were supplied, and all queries raised by them in their management letter were satisfactorily answered. This is why not a single, and I repeat, not a single adverse audit finding was made by the Auditor General in its 2025 audited report on the Gold Board, not on imaginary or hallucinatory losses, not on procurement breaches or breaches of the Public Financial Management Act. Not a single adverse finding in the report of the Auditor General on accounts for the year 2025. The media, I humbly submit, must not condone and entertain the deliberate propagation of lies in the face of glaring evidence to the contrary. Now, friends from the media, after adducing these indisputable findings of the Auditor General to puncture the lie that the Gold Board made losses in 2025, Afenyo-Markin and his associates quickly abandoned this line of attack and have now sought refuge in the recently published IMF report on the Bank of Ghana's standard credit facility, in which the IMF reported that the Bank of Ghana recorded a loss of $1.7 billion under its domestic gold purchase program in 2025. Their position has now conveniently changed from the old false narrative that the Gold Board made losses to the new false narrative, which is that the Gold Board is responsible for losses incurred by the Bank of Ghana under the domestic gold purchase program. Ladies and gentlemen, nothing could be further from the truth. First, nowhere in the under-referenced IMF reports is Gold Board accused by the IMF as having caused the losses reported to have been incurred by the Bank of Ghana under the domestic gold purchase program. I challenge Afenyo-Markin to point to any page, paragraph, sentence, phrase, or punctuation mark in the said reference reports of the IMF where the Gold Board was accused by the IMF as the entity responsible for losses incurred by the Bank of Ghana. In summary, ladies and gentlemen, what the IMF report states is that Bank of Ghana incurred losses through the sale of gold under its domestic gold purchase program of $400 million in the year 2024 and $1.7 billion in the year 2025. And that the 2025 loss of $1.7 billion was as a result of, I'm quoting the IMF verbatim, the scaling up of the domestic gold purchase program, not incompetence or mismanagement. According to the IMF, that loss was as a result of the scaling up, the expansion of the program. The IMF also stated that these accounting losses partly reflect valuation effects. In particularizing what the IMF considers to be components of this loss, the IMF listed three things which included fees paid to the gold board under the domestic gold purchase program. This is the true context within which the name of the gold board featured relative to losses under the DGPP in that reference IMF reports. So I want to read the relevant portions of that report, because most of the times they come in the media and they say the IMF has said that gold board has made a loss of 1.7 billion, and nobody questions them to point out which part of the IMF report said that. They say that the IMF says that gold board is the reason for the loss, and nobody questions them to provide the proof. And we are all talking about IMF report, IMF report. The fact checkers must get to work. What does this IMF report say? Now, let's first of all start with the seat review on the ECF, that report published by the IMF just a few weeks ago. And the provision in that report on domestic gold purchase program can be found on page 27, paragraph 50. This is what the IMF said. The domestic gold purchase program weighed on the financial sustainability of the BOG. The DGPP, which is the short form of domestic gold purchase program, on which the BOG relied to accumulate reserves to intermediate effects to the private sector, has generated losses of 22 billion, which is 1.5% of GDP in 2025. A government cost-sharing agreement at end 2025 involving the transfer of bonds with a par value of 5 billion cedis in March 2026 resulted in the breach of the ceiling on BOG claims on the central government and public entities at the end of December 2025 and end March 2026. In July 2026, the BOG Gold Board and the government signed a memorandum of understanding formalizing the transfer of the domestic gold purchase program activities from the BOG to Gold Board and eliminating related BOG quasi-fiscal risk. An external auditing firm is conducting a special audit of the domestic gold purchase program from its inception, and the inception is 2021, whose results should be available in 2026 Q3. Domestic gold purchase program related losses coupled with high cost of OP market operations and exchange rate valuation losses resulting from cedi appreciation worsened the BOG's negative equity position to 6.7% of GDP. This is what they said about domestic gold purchase program. Nowhere in this report is Gold Board accused as having caused any loss incurred by Bank of Ghana. The second and last is the IMF report on selected issues, which was published on the 4th of August. Paragraph 13 of that report speaks about the domestic gold purchase program. And that is what it says. DGPP operations have generated significant losses for BOG. Losses in 2024. So if you are watching me, you should be asking yourself whether there was Gold Board in 2024. Losses in 2024 were equivalent to almost $400 million, 0.5% of GDP, 1/3 of which were related to gold for oil. In 2025, the significant scaling up of domestic gold purchase operations led to losses of over $1.7 billion. So the IMF tells you what led to the losses. They are saying the significant scaling up of the program. It is there, black and white. Then, almost entirely related to G4R Dory purchases. This amounted to a loss of 17% of the value of Dory gold sold by the BOG. Losses accrued on gold trades are a combination of service. This was the only reference to the Gold Board here. So listen, losses accrued on gold trades are a combination of service and asset fees paid to Gold Board, discounts on gold sold to off-takers, and most importantly, exchange rate losses from the spread between Forest Bureau rates paid to purchase gold and the cedi reference rate used for BOG accounting. Survey data suggests that Ghanaian ASGM prices are among the highest in the region. These accounting losses partly reflect valuation effects rather than economic cost. blah, blah, blah. These are the relevant portions. So, ladies and gentlemen, these are the words of the IMF. Not to suggest that the words of the IMF are sacrosanct, but it is important for us not to attribute to the IMF what they have not said. They have not said that the gold board is the one that caused the Bank of Ghana to lose $1.7 billion, as I have clearly demonstrated to you. Now, ladies and gentlemen, aside the fact that the new false narrative of Afenyo-Markin grossly misrepresents the IMF's The PMMC Gold Board had no role in the sale of gold by the Bank of Ghana under the Domestic Gold Purchase Program. It was not a signatory to any offtake agreements under the Domestic Gold Purchase Program. Neither was it involved in determining selling prices or sale terms. In commodity trading, profit is simply a function of selling price minus cost. The IMF states that the reported losses stem from the sale of gold by the Bank of Ghana, not the sale of gold by the PMMC. If the PMMC, which later became Gold Board, had no role in the sale of gold it purchased, then it cannot be said to be responsible for losses incurred through the sale of gold by the BOG, simply because it bought gold as a buying agent and was paid fees. In any case, the under-reference IMF report says that the BOG incurred a loss of $400 million from gold sales under the Domestic Gold Purchase Program in the year 2024. Ladies and gentlemen, there was no gold board in the year 2024. Who then caused that loss? Can